Smart villains can sometimes feel untouchable. They plan ahead, commit murder, and for a while look in control. Yet they keep running into the same set of problems, losing in very specific ways. Syndrome talks too much, Vector trusts his tech too much, and even Shen, nearly perfect, misses one thing. So what keeps tripping up villains who are clearly intelligent? Syndrome from The Incredibles warns us about two major problems associated with smart villains. But first, we have to acknowledge something that some might overlook. It's the fact that Syndrome is actually a genius. No, seriously, let's forget that he died in a very funny way. This dude deserves to be amongst the smartest villains ever created. Check it out. He didn't have any superpowers, wasn't born with super strength or the ability to fly. Bro was just a kid named Buddy who was really good at making things.
I invented these. I can fly. Can you fly?
By the time he grows up, he has built an entire empire on a private island and created so many cool technological gadgets. Even his big end goal makes sense inside his worldview. He wants to sell hero tech to the world, flood the market, and erase what made real heroes special. It fits his past as a kid who worshipped heroes and got pushed away. But even better, everything about his life shows planning. He studies supers for years, learns how they fight, learns how they think, then designs the Omnidroid to beat them one by one. Each version of the robot exists because the last one failed. That means testing, data, and patience. He even sends Bob on fake hero missions to test the machine in secret. That plan alone requires timing, lies, and tech, and a deep understanding of Bob's pride. Syndrome knows exactly which button to push, and he pushes it gently until Bob walks right into the trap. That's incredible, even more incredible than the incredible things that the Incredibles incredibly performed. Okay, that was a bit of a mouthful, but you get the point. Unfortunately, even the smartest people have weaknesses, and for Syndrome, his issue is that he just loves the sound of his own voice. Now, talking isn't bad. If a villain says something to mess with the hero's head or explain their motive in a few sentences, that's fine. The problem, however, is the monologue, which is when a villain gives a long, uninterrupted speech while they have the hero trapped. But do you know what's really insane? The Incredibles actually makes fun of this early on. Remember when Mr. Incredible and Frozone were sitting in a car talking about the glory days? Frozone tells a story about a villain named Baron von Ruthless. He says the Baron had him on a platter, totally defeated by a death ray. But instead of firing,
he starts monologuing.
So because the Baron wouldn't shut up, Lucius had time to find a way to escape. The movie is telling us right then and there, if you're a villain and you start talking too much, you're probably going to lose. The funny thing is, Syndrome knows this too. Later in the movie, when he reveals his identity to Mr. Incredible, he starts bragging about how he got rich. This gave Mr. Incredible the time he needed to throw a log at him.
You sly dog! You got me monologuing! I can't believe.
But here's the problem. Even though he knows he's doing it, he keeps doing it. He's so full of himself that he can't help it. He continues to throw Mr. Incredible around, showing off his 0-point energy and bragging. And that was how he ends up accidentally launching him into the jungle. This gives Mr. Incredible the chance to hide and eventually find out what Syndrome is really up to. It happens again later when he captures the whole family. He has the most powerful family in the world stuck in a high-tech cage. This is the moment he should win. But instead of finishing his plan, he stands there and explains his whole everyone can be super manifesto. This ties directly to pride. Syndrome believes he earned the right to speak. He beat real heroes, built the perfect weapon, and trapped the greatest superfamily alive. So he sees himself as the smartest person in every room. That belief makes silence feel wrong to him, whereas talking lets him enjoy the moment. and this makes absolute sense psychologically. Prideful people will always boast about their win. That same pride shows up later during the Omnidroid fight in the city. Syndrome ends up losing to the robot because he celebrated too early. But this movie does something amazing. It warns us about another trope. It uses Edna mode to foreshadow Syndrome's death, but also to inform us about another problem smart villains have: no capes. This means that your favorite villains, such as Anakin Skywalker, Victor Von Doom, Hela, and others, are in trouble here. You see, Edna lists all the heroes who died because their capes got caught in missiles or jet turbines.
Dyna guy, snag on takeoff, splashdown, sucked into a vortex. No capes!
Unfortunately, Syndrome didn't get the memo. He wanted to look like a classic hero so bad he wore a big flowing cape. At the very end, this cape gets sucked into his own jet engine, killing him. So the movie perfectly warns against capes and monologues. However, a lot of villains still fall into that monologue trap. A lot of villains, except maybe Lord Shen. Shen is also very smart and uses technology, like cannons, to win. But Shen is different from Syndrome because Shen doesn't waste time talking for long, even though you might want him to. Shen wastes no time committing genocide, and when he appears again to take over Gongmen City, it was one of the greatest entrances by any villain to date.
Now we've got the pleasantries out of the way, please leave my house.
Dude talks a little, annoys those he has to, fights those he can, and then kills a kung fu master all within a few minutes. When he meets Po for the first time, it's actually Po who does all the talking. The panda was busy making jokes and acting silly, and Shen is actually a bit confused. The peacock had expected more, so forgive him if he didn't order for Po's head immediately. Besides, Shen even admits that the only reason Po is still alive is because his stupidity is funny to him. But Shen doesn't let that distract him for long. After a few laughs, he just gives the order.
Why are we laughing?
Take aim.
You can tell he wants the hero gone immediately. But when Shen does talk, he doesn't do it to show off, but mostly to manipulate his opponent. Later, when they are fighting and Shen has a chance to talk about Po's parents, he uses his words as a weapon to make Po sad and distracted so he can win the fight. Even in the very last scene, Shen keeps attacking until the very end. He doesn't stop to explain his feelings while the hero is trapped. He stays focused on the goal. That difference matters. Shen keeps moving. Syndrome keeps performing. One uses talk as a tool, and the other uses it as a reward. They are both great villains, but one just escapes the monologue trap. This next problem, however, is more common, and even the great Lord Shen falls victim to it. In Despicable Me, there's this scene where Gru, a man who considers himself the world's greatest villain, tries to infiltrate a high-tech fortress. He wants his shrink ray back, and he's willing to use every gadget in his arsenal to get it. But whatever tricks he attempts are repelled by missiles and even a shark. However, inside the house, sitting comfortably on a sleek sofa in a bright orange tracksuit is Vector, and he isn't even breaking a sweat. He's just tapping keys on a keyboard, treating the entire assault like a casual video game. While Gru is outside getting blasted, zapped, and tossed around, Vector is perfectly safe, perfectly calm, and totally in control. From Vector's point of view, this is fun. This is proof that his power works exactly the way he designed it to. His house thinks for him, his weapons protect him, and his tech does the fighting while he relaxes. This is because Vector is another tech-smart villain just like Syndrome. However, Vector manages to do the impossible. He steals the Great Pyramid of Giza and replaces it with a giant inflatable copy. He steals the shrink ray right out from under Gru and shrinks Gru's plane with ease. He also has a gun that shoots squids or piranhas, so he has every right to introduce himself with pride.
That's me, because I'm committing crimes with both direction and magnitude.
That line sounds silly, but it says everything about how he thinks. Vector sees the world as math: inputs, outputs, systems, and control. That way of thinking gives him an edge that the hero cannot match. Gru cannot outbuild, outgun him, or even overpower him, not to mention that he is a Nepo baby, one who can easily get a loan from the bank because his father is in charge. So, on paper, Vector has already won. This is where the problem starts. Vector believes that because his power is greater, defeat no longer exists. He believes his system covers every eventuality, but that belief makes him stop asking simple questions. Like, what if someone comes in through a door that feels harmless? What if the threat looks boring? What if the danger comes wrapped in cookies? Because he is so focused on mathematics, Vector never planned for kindness, children, or delivery boxes. And that was the beginning of his eventual downfall. Unfortunately, this problem shows up in most smart villains. They build something amazing and then trust it too much. We see this exact same problem with Lord Shen. Shen is the gold standard for a smart villain. He is a pragmatist with a perfect plan, a perfect army, and he spent 30 years building a weapon that would make Kung Fu obsolete. But Shen's big mistake was the same as Vector's. He relied too much on the fact that his power was greater. He believed that because he had the cannon, he was invincible. He couldn't have predicted a panda using something as vague as inner peace to fight back. In Shen's logical genius mind, a ball of metal and fire should always win. But he was so focused on his superior technology that he didn't account for a power that he couldn't measure or build in a factory. The only smart villain who almost escapes this trap is Death from Puss in Boots. Now, it's true that Puss was able to keep Death at bay for a while, and that happened because Death was playing with his food. Death enjoyed the chase because he knew Puss was on his last life. So he relied on the fact that he was terrified and had nowhere to run. And he wasn't wrong. However, Death had the same problem as Vector and Shen, because he let his feeling of being greater distract him from the goal. This gave Puss the time to find humility and change his perspective on life. But we can still call Death an outlier here because of what he represents. You see, you can break Vector's keyboard and you can blow up Shen's fleet, but you cannot stop Death. Death told Puss at the end that he had enjoyed the hunt, and even though he is stepping back for now, he made one thing very clear.
You know we will meet again, right?
See.
Death is the only one whose power is truly as great as he says it is, and that is what makes him so chilling. He is the one genius who is the inevitable conclusion to everyone else's story. But while a villain like Shen met his downfall because he couldn't predict something as vague as inner peace, this next villain problem is kinda annoying when you think about it. Imagine living a life where everyone in the world loves you. You are the biggest star in history. You have a statue in your hometown, and every time you sing, people fall under the spell of your beautiful voice. This was the life of Ernesto de la Cruz. He started as a nobody from a small town called Santa Cecilia, but he had a dream to seize his moment. Then he became a famous musician, and later a movie star who could ride horses, jump from trees, and fly, all while playing his famous white guitar. And even though he died in a tragic accident when a giant church bell crushed him, his legend only grew. In the land of the dead, he continued in fame and lived in a massive mansion, threw the biggest parties, and was treated like royalty. He was charming, handsome, and the hero every kid, including little Miguel, wanted to be.
No more hiding, Dante. I gotta seize my moment.
And here's the truth of it. Aside from being known as a well-written twist villain who is basically a psychopath, Ernesto is also incredibly smart. Think about it, he maintained a massive, complicated lie for generations. He managed to fool an entire nation of living and even dead people. He was a master of his own brand. He knew exactly how to talk, how to smile, and how to act like a grand, generous mentor to Miguel. He even had the common sense to be nice to Miguel at first, saving him from a pool and bonding with him.
I have a great-great-grandson!
He built an entire empire of fame and wealth on top of a murder he successfully covered up and nobody suspected him. But this brings us to the third big problem with smart villains. You can have a plan that is 99% genius, yet ruin the whole thing with one or two incredibly stupid mistakes. It doesn't matter how many years you spent being careful, if you trip over your own feet at the finish line, you still lose. Ernesto's first big mistake was actually an act of ego. He was so proud of murdering his best friend Hector to steal his songs that he actually put a version of the murder into one of his movies. In the film El Camino a Casa, Ernesto plays a character named Don Hidalgo. In one scene, he tells his friend he would move heaven and earth for him, then gives him a toast and poisons his drink. Ernesto thought he was being clever, like it was a secret joke only he knew. But that clever move was exactly what ruined him, because that movie played on TV all the time. Miguel had memorized every line. So, when Miguel saw the real Hector and Ernesto arguing in the land of the dead, he heard them use those exact same words. Move heaven and earth. With that, the kid was smart enough to connect the dots. He realized that the movie scene was actually how Ernesto killed Hector in real life.
How could you? Security! Security!
If Ernesto hadn't been so cocky as to put his crime in a hit movie, Miguel might never have figured out that the greatest musician was actually a common thief and a killer. But it gets better, or worse, for Ernesto. Even after that, he could have still won. He could have just killed Miguel, which means Hector would have disappeared. It wouldn't have mattered that the Rivera family was a witness because, with Hector dead, how would they have convinced the land of the dead that Ernesto was a murderer? But instead, Ernesto made the biggest, most villainous mistake of all. He got angry and let his ego take over. While he was standing on a high balcony, he started arguing with the kid and yapping about being the greatest musician of all time. This gave the Rivera family enough time to set the cameras on him. Every single person in the stadium, thousands of his fans, was watching him on the big screen. Ernesto, thinking he was alone with his victims, looked right at Miguel and basically confessed to everything. Then he threw the kid off the building.
Whatever it takes.
In the end, his smart planning was destroyed by his own big mouth and his need to feel powerful. But while Ernesto's problem is straightforward, this fourth problem is kinda tricky, and we can only explain it better with Hans from Frozen. You see, there are some villains who are smart, but only because the world around them keeps tripping over its own feet. These are the guys who aren't actually masterminds or inventors, but are only intelligent because everyone else in the movie is acting like they've never used their brains before. If you put these villains in a room with someone even a little bit suspicious, their whole plan would fall apart in 5 minutes. There are some folks who think Hans was a genius with how he fooled Anna and the entire kingdom of Arendelle. But did he? If we look closely at Arendelle, the bar for being smart was basically on the floor. First, we have Anna. Oh, Anna. We love her, but because she spent her entire life separated from a proper social life, she didn't develop right, especially upstairs. This is why she was so desperate for love that she was ready to marry a guy she met 3 minutes ago. Hans didn't have to be a genius to trick her. Nope. Dude just had to be a handsome guy who said, "I will never shut you out."
Okay, can I just say something crazy? I love crazy.
Even the adults in the kingdom made it way too easy for him. When Anna decides to go into a freezing magical blizzard on a horse by herself, she leaves Hans, a complete stranger from another country, in charge of the entire kingdom. And everyone just goes along with it. No one says, hey, maybe we should leave the royal steward or a general in charge instead of the guy who just got here 5 minutes ago. Because everyone was so trusting and, frankly, a bit irresponsible, Hans didn't have to do much work. He just handed out blankets and waited for Anna not to come back. His brilliance was really just him taking advantage of a kingdom that had no security plan and a princess who was too naive. But never mistake him for a smart villain, because a truly smart villain like Lord Shen is a master of cause and effect. We've said on this channel before that one of the best qualities of an intelligent villain is one who plans and strategizes, and Hans left that group chat. However, the admin of that chat is Shen. The peacock spent 30 years in exile preparing for his return. Rather than hope things would happen, he carried out a genocide to protect his future, built an industrial army, hoarded metal to manufacture a revolutionary weapon, and systematically eliminated his greatest threats, like Thundering Rhino, to clear his path to the throne. Shen's plan was active and calculated. Hans, on the other hand, didn't have a plan, but a hope and pray strategy that only worked because he was incredibly lucky. It's absurd. A smart villain doesn't rely on the hero having a magical accident to succeed. If Elsa hadn't lost control of her powers, Hans would have just been the 13th prince of a random island, sitting at a party with nothing to do. So at the end of the day, he's just an opportunist who got extremely lucky. But now let's talk about a villain that people actually love. Gaston from Beauty and the Beast. Now, I know what you're thinking. Gaston is handsome, he's strong, he's a great hunter, and he has a song that everyone loves to sing. He is charismatic and he knows how to lead a crowd.
As you see, I've got biceps to spare.
He is basically a well-written villain. But is Gaston smart? Absolutely not. He is just a big fish in a small pond. He lives in a tiny village where people think it is not wise for women to read. They are so simple-minded that they spend their whole day singing about how much they love Gaston's thick neck and how many eggs he eats. In a town where nobody thinks for themselves, Gaston looks like a leader just because he's the loudest person there. His big plan to get Belle is to throw her father, Maurice, into an asylum, unless she agrees to marry him. It's a cruel plan, but it's not exactly a genius move. He only gets away with it because the villagers are too scared or too silly to realize that Maurice isn't actually crazy. Then he manipulates the town into a kill-a-beast mob.
We're not safe till his head is mounted on my wall. I say we kill the beast.
He tells them the monster will eat their children, and because the villagers are terrified of anything they don't understand, they grab their pitchforks. So while we might love to hate Hans or sing along with Gaston, we have to admit that they aren't in the same league as villains who actually challenge a smart hero. They are just opportunists who found a room full of people who weren't paying attention. And this is a problem with smart villains, because guys like Hans sometimes share their title. But while it is fine if these 4 problems with smart villains do not go away anytime soon, one thing that must is how Disney writes men. We made a video tracing how and why Disney writes men the way they do. That video has caused quite a stir, so you should probably go and see why.